We have a very special episode of this Locked On Red Sox, Locked On Pirates crossover. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see former Locked On Red Sox host and my friend Gabrielle Starr. She's going to be joining us today as we talk all things baseball, not so much Pirates. Sorry, Ethan, the host of Locked On Pirates. He's having a very sad year, but the Red Sox are going to play the Pirates. So we should touch on that, just kind of all the momentum is in the Red Sox favor. Just took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. Everyone just seems to kind of be clicking right now. The team is getting healthier, which is a good sign. People are starting to come back. And I've said this before on the show that the Red Sox need to take advantage of these series against bad teams. They need to beat up on these teams and start building a run. They're not that far off out of a playoff spot. They're very close, and they can get some ground against a bad Pirates team.
Yeah, I'm not even going to disagree with it anymore. I love that most of the Locked On hosts are like, yeah, no offense, Ethan. I'm like, I'm not even going to take offense to it anymore when my own front office doesn't want this team to be good. So I went off about that on my episode yesterday with Gary Morgan about the ineptitude of the front office that has just been constant, terrible decisions. I mean, when a guy's batting 186 and he's still on your roster full of a bunch of young kids, what message are you really sending to your fans? And, of course, the best Pirates host on the planet, Ethan. Stanley Smith, of course.
Just to cheer you up, the Red Sox also have at least one player who's batting under 200 on the roster. Everybody right now is freaking out because Kevin Plawecki's hitting 163, and he has a 228 slugging percentage, and he is our main catcher.
Yeah.
Could you name the Pirates catcher right now?
No.
I think that says enough. So me and a bunch of the guests that I have on the show most of the time, we're like, that catcher is starting today. We don't even name them anymore because they're just there's so many of them at this point. So we're just like, oh, Jose Godoy is playing. Oh yeah, he's just that catcher. So at this point, that's the point of the season the Pirates are at. For the Red Sox, like you said, you guys have the momentum going into this series. You beat the Yankees 2 out of 3 games. Something the Pirates can also claim to their credit, shockingly. So you're welcome, Boston fans, for that earlier this year. But again, when you look at these two teams, Lauren, and I wanted to ask you specifically, what is exactly the disconnect for the Red Sox in terms of where they're at currently versus where they could be, which is a playoff spot? I didn't know what way to really present that. It's just like they're not bad, but they're not where I remember the Red Sox being last year at this time last year, where World Series was on their mind, and now it's how do we survive in the playoff race?
I think there's a disconnect here between front office and the players on the field. And I think it stemmed from the trade deadline, essentially, when you trade your starting catcher. And then all of a sudden it's like Chaim Bloom panicked and was like, oh, I don't know which way to go. So we're just kind of going to stay the same spot that we're at, going to get some prospects, some big league ready players, and not really make the team better, but not make it worse. So I think there's that kind of disconnect where there's frustration, there's confusion about, do you believe in this team? Does front office want us to be a contender this year? Before Christian Vasquez got traded, they asked him if he thought Chaim Bloom believed in this team, and he said, I don't know. And then a few days later, he shipped out of town. So I just think there's no real direction for this team, and it causes frustration among all the players, especially the leaders on this team, the Bogarts, the Devers, the JD Martinez. And it just sends a bad message where you have the opportunity to bolster your team, to bolster your bullpen, which you just did not do at the trade deadline. And just, like I said, you didn't make this team better. You didn't make them worse. You just you didn't choose a direction to go. And I think it just caused players to be like, so what are we doing? What kind of team are we?
And what direction did you want them to go in, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, the Pirates were pretty clear. We were selling. Like, that was like what we were doing. But what direction at the time did you say, okay, this is the direction they should go, that would have made the most sense and been the most consistent direction?
Once they traded Vasquez, I was convinced they were sellers. And I was like, you don't trade your starting catcher. No, he's not the biggest name on this team, but he is your starting catcher. He's homegrown talent. He's a leader. People respect him. Fans respect him. So I was like, they're definitely selling. And then they just kept bringing players in, and I was like, they're not sending anyone out. They didn't send Evaldi. They didn't send Martinez out. I was like, what the hell is going on? So I thought they were going to sell. I thought they should have sold once they traded Vasquez, but I'm not in charge of making those decisions, and maybe it's for the better. I don't really know.
And I can give you and Gabrielle solace looking ahead to this series that the series the Pirates just wrapped up against the Giants were, ironically, 2 games under 500 when the series started. I believe it was 3 actually, but brought themselves above or at 500 near series end after a sweep. The Red Sox are 57 and 59, 4.5 back. I will agree here. The Pirates are awful right now. They were awful. Gabrielle will probably laugh at this. They were awful when she was the host of this podcast for the Locked On Red Sox. They're still awful now. They're still making the terrible decisions they keep deciding to make. I mean, again, your best pitcher on the roster is not on the roster, and he's not hurt. He's in AAA, wasting his arm away. The rookie NL leader in home runs, and Jack Sawinski, is also in AAA. So they're sending a message that they're awful. So the Red Sox here just need to take advantage. That's what I would say. They just need to take advantage. But what has kind of stopped them from taking advantage of beating teams like my Pirates team that arguably, I'm not going to disagree here, should just lose these 3 games?
It's just been a tough season, like overall.
Yeah.
Like they can't figure out their chemistry. They can't figure out how to beat bad teams. And it's been a problem all season. So, I mean, I don't have any answers. Maybe Gabrielle does, but it's just been such an annoying season after coming 2 games from the World Series 10 months ago.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, and we'll start with something that I was told by like a very reputable source in about March, April. Basically, there were 2 things that kind of pre-derailed and then derailed like the season. The first was that they didn't think JD Martinez was going to opt into the final year of his contract. And because he did, it changed how they were planning on spending money last winter. Dave Dombrowski, I spoke with him at spring training, and that's my dog behind me with the cone. Dave Dombrowski, I spoke with him at spring training, and I asked him about the Kyle Schwarber signing because the rumors were that they were very close to signing him before the lockout. And he basically confirmed that. He's like, we almost signed him in November. And then they like held off. But the point is, the Red Sox were never like in the Kyle Schwarber thing, as much as Chaim Bloom wants to say otherwise. Like, he was going to the Phillies. That was just going to happen. And I'm not saying like the Red Sox should have signed him over somebody else, but his production is clear, and you trade away Hunter Renfroe and you don't replace Kyle Schwarber, and you're literally losing like 60 home runs. Like, I don't really know how you can excuse that. I'm a big JBJ fan, but and I will say the injuries, especially to like Kike Hernandez, Chaim Bloom admitted that changed how they plan to use him. They were going to use him in very specific situations based on like pitcher batter matchups. You know, he's very good at Fenway Park offensively, pretty much terrible almost everywhere else. That changed because other players got hurt. So they were forced to play him more than they planned to. That's not really his fault. I still don't agree with releasing him because now he's on the Blue Jays and he's going to be playing against us next week at Fenway Park, his favorite place to play. So that's great. And their Sox are paying him to do it. But that was the first thing, was the JD thing kind of messed up their offseason plans. And then Tristan Casas, I have this on good authority. I was told that the plan was if Casas started the season in AAA and was good for like the first month or 2, they were going to call him up. They were going to trade Bobby Dahlbeck. Casas got hurt, so they couldn't do that. And that led to the Red Sox trading for Eric Hosmer at the deadline, which, let's be honest, yes, the Red Sox had talked to the Padres in the past about Eric Hosmer, but really that trade fell into Chaim Bloom's lap. Basically, he said no to DC, and the Padres were like, crap, now we need to find somewhere else to put him. Let's pay somebody else to take him. And the Red Sox were like, I guess we'll take him, even though he's under contract for like 3 more years, and you have Cassis like champing at the bit in AAA. So what are you going to do then? So it's just kind of a very perplexing offseason and season. You pay Trevor Story, and even when he was healthy, he was underperforming his contract, which isn't a surprise because he came from Coors Field and he had the worst year of his career last year. And you give him Xander Bogaerts money instead of just giving Xander Bogaerts money or spending the money on pitching that's not in its mid to late 30s, early 40s. And, what are you doing? Like Chaim Bloom last year, it felt like he often strikes gold and every once in a while it's a dud. This season, we realize, no, what actually is happening here is every once in a while he strikes gold, but most of the time it's like needles in a haystack, and most of his haystack, because you can't acquire Michael Wacha, Rich Hill, and James Paxton, all who have either current or previous injuries in their history and are of an advanced age for their sport, when you also are dealing with Chris Sale injuries and Nathan Eovaldi also has a bad injury history. That's not how you can spend your money. So I think basically from what I've been told, the consensus in the clubhouse is like, what are you doing? This isn't the Rays. You don't have the farm system to sustain 3 pitchers in like their late 30s, early 40s who get hurt, plus literally everybody else. Yes, freak injuries happen. Sox have had a bunch of them. But in general, this isn't a team, clearly, we saw it for the last 2 months, that can sustain with their minor leaguers what happens at the big league level. And it's like, I think overall the issue is that the way that Chaim Bloom is running the Red Sox is he's running them like the Rays. Yes, he spent money on Trevor Story, but A, that money should have gone to Devers and Bogaerts, first of all. And B, he ignores kind of the intangibles about Boston sports, team leadership, clubhouse energy, because that's not a factor in Tampa. Tampa doesn't have intangibles because their players are there for so short of a time before getting traded for more prospects that they don't have time to build intangibles. Meanwhile, the Red Sox, it's all about history. It's all about camaraderie. It's all about energy and vibes. And I don't think he gets that. And I think that's why all of these decisions are coming to a head in such a bad place. And I know that was a whole rant, but I'm very hyped up on coffee and I'm frustrated because I'm not going to pretend I know how to be a GM, but I will say that as a person who can look at things very logically, his decisions don't make sense to people who have been around this team for their entire lives. His decisions make sense to him because he comes from the Rays. But the Red Sox are very much not the Rays. And if you have something like the 5th highest luxury tax allocations in baseball, your team should be winning. And they're not, because you spent the money the wrong way. And yes, a lot of the money is Dombrowski money that is expiring, Nathan Eovaldi, JD Martinez, Chris Sale after next year. That's Dombrowski money. But most of the pitchers on the team now are Chaim Bloom acquisitions. And, Garrett Whitlock, before they gave him that extension, he was a very affordable deal. So it's not like you can blame guys like him. It's, paying a guy like James Paxton, who hasn't pitched all year, banking on him being good again when he does come back, which may be this year. And if not, they gave him a 2-year club option for the next 2 years, even though he hasn't been good in 4 years. That's a Rays move. That's not a Red Sox move.
I think a lot of this too is the Red Sox and their fans. They went from Dave Dombrowski, who would make the move to get the player he wanted, to Chaim Bloom, who is not going, he's going to make smaller moves. And I've said this all season, that he's treating this team like the Rays. Gabrielle, you just said that too. And it's mind-boggling because you have the luxury tax, you have the storied franchise, you have fans that you have not been giving transparency to since you got here, and it's becoming really annoying for the most part, because all fans want is transparency. Why'd you trade Vasquez? Why did you trade this? Why'd you acquire this person? And there's just no transparency there from Chaim Bloom, from the front office. And the more the moves he makes, the more I'm like, I don't understand, because the Red Sox fans don't have patience, especially after almost reaching the World Series, coming from within 2 games of the World Series. And you go out, you should have a good offseason. You don't, whatever. And I know that there's money tied up in JD Martinez, but there are other ways to get players that should be here and that maybe you let go. Like, to this day, and I'm probably going to die with this on my headstone, I don't understand why there has been no bullpen help since last year at the trade deadline. Not one. Not one.
Lauren, not even last year. Not even
one
last
ounce.
year.
No.
Go back to the 2018 postseason
Yeah.
when Alex Cora used his starting rotation for over 13 innings of relief work.
Yep.
How was that not an indication that this team's bullpen? I wrote this 5 years ago. I wrote this last year. This team, to me, like, yes, you've had incredible closers. Keith Folk, Koji, Kimbrel, not in 2018, but in 2017. You've had incredible closers. But what this team has never really had in the new era of like short starting pitching and deep relief needs, this team has never had deep relief needs. And you look at like the Braves, who the Sox just played, and like they freaking activated Kirby Yates from the injured list. He had Tommy John. He hadn't pitched in 2 years. They activated him from the injured list like the second day of the series. And the day before, the Sox had gone into extra innings with the Braves, and their bullpen was like Raisel Iglesias, Kenley Jansen. Like, I'm like, how do you have arms on arms on arms? And it's like, why didn't the Red Sox go for Raisel Iglesias at the deadline? Yes, the Angels had given him a 4-year contract extension, so the Braves just took on a lot. But like, you have tens of millions of dollars coming off the book at the end of this season and more next year. You're telling me you don't want a good pitcher like Iglesias locked in for a pretty affordable price for the next 4 years? Why? What is the point? I mean, this goes back to the whole race thing. You don't get a trophy for having the best, most stocked farm system. Everyone gave Dave Dombrowski crap in 2019 when the farm system was decimated and the starting rotation wasn't healthy, so they weren't repeat contenders. But you know what? Now he's come full circle to being the hero again. It's like the whole Batman thing. You either die a hero, live long enough to see yourself become the villain. He's now being reincarnated as the hero because people are like, damn, remember when we had a GM who spent money? And they're not wrong, because the point is you build up a farm system to either develop those players or to use them to get proven players. And the Rays don't do that. The Rays develop players, trade them for more prospects, and lather, rinse, repeat. And you don't do that in Boston. You can't do that in Boston because you will have fans rioting outside on Jersey Street. Like, it's not an acceptable business practice here. And I know that sounds snobby. Like, I'm very well aware, and I'm sure Lauren is too, 4 championships in 15 years, the most since 2000. I'm not even saying like I want a championship. I'm saying I want the team to be run competently in a way that indicates that you know what you're dealing with in Boston, because we're not like other markets.
No.
And I'm not saying that in like an elitist way, because I think that more markets should be like us. I wish every market was as driven to championships as Boston has been in the last 20 years, because that would make the sport better as a whole. I wish every market had rabid fans. I wish that every front office spent money, because then baseball would be better. I'm just saying that that's not the current situation in Major League Baseball. And you can't run a big market team like the Red Sox the way that you run the Tampa Bay Rays, because people will not accept it.
And it's funny too, Lauren, that she brings that up, is because the divide between the Pirates and the Red Sox, okay, both of these teams are below 500, but the divide is, if the Red Sox were 45 and 70, I don't know if Boston would be standing as a city if they were 45-70.
No.
For the Pirates, though, and like you brought up the discrepancy in like the last 20 years, the Pirates, for me, it's like I've seen 3 seasons where they competed and won 1 game in a wild card game, and that was considered a success for that team over the course of 22 years. And the thing that scares me is I hear Red Sox fans and a lot of other fan bases talk about, I wish this is how things were. As a Pirates fan, the thing that's scaring me, and I think a lot of Red Sox fans may forget this, but Ben Cherington is the general manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I'm sorry, but he is showing me absolutely nothing right now that he did in Boston. And I get it. A team fell into his lap in Boston. I'm sorry. I don't know if that offends anybody in Boston, but that team fell into his lap proverbially. It really did. And he gets to Pittsburgh, and Gabrielle, you elaborated on this. Farm systems don't win championships. The Pirates right now, that's what they're building their entire network on, is all of this stuff with the prospects. It's like these guys are going to come up and do this, right? You brought up intangibles. You can't develop intangibles in Boston if the guys don't play and if you get rid of them too quickly. Same thing in Pittsburgh. How do prospects ever get better if you don't play them? Like with the Tristan Casas thing, he got hurt, but also as a organization like Boston is, have your backup plan in place already. Like you guys have the value of saying, okay, we can go spend money and have a backup plan. The Pirates, as you guys, I mentioned to you before about who's our catcher. When Roberto Perez went down at the beginning of the year, I knew that this was going to happen because they have no plan whatsoever. So I think the one comparison between the two teams right now, neither of them is running in a way that makes sense. The Pirates a little bit more than the Red Sox, because at least the Red Sox still have that little small chance of making the playoffs. But transparency in baseball across all 30 teams, like, again, as Gabrielle said, some markets just, they don't aspire to win. That's how some owners are. Like Oakland right now. Oakland already knows they're on their way out. They're going to move eventually. But be transparent about it. Just say if you're going to rebuild. Or in Boston's case, we don't think the bullpen needs fixing. Okay, cool. You say it. You know they need it. But if you say it, it at least makes it better than just silently not fixing it at all.
It also doesn't help with the Red Sox having really good prospects, really strong prospects, and a lot of them getting called up before they're ready. No fault of their own because of these injuries, and there is that no plan B. Your plan B was Franchi Cordero at first base, and that's a terrible plan B. So
sorry, I just peed my pants a little bit at that concept.
It's wild that, and again, no fault of Tristan Casas. That he sprained his ankle was much worse than they anticipated, and you take your time with him. He could have taken all season to rehab if it meant he was going to be 100% to be ready for the big leagues. But we have Brian Bayo up here, who's going to be a fantastic MLB pitcher, but he can't get into a groove right now because he's not ready. And he was lighting it up in Worcester. He was going through the minors like wildfire. And you have him up here. You have all these other players. You had Jalen Davis up here. You had Jeter Downs up here. You had all these players that just were not ready. And they're good prospects. They will pan out in some way, shape, or form. But again, this goes to Chaim Bloom not getting proper help, whether that's the bullpen, whether that's a plan B kind of thing. And even with now Kike Hernandez out, he could have been a plan B for second base, but he's been hurt. So you take away an infield option and an outfield option, and it's just a giant mess.
I think, you know what, this is a long-standing issue with them too. I mean, Alex Cora said this yesterday that Aaron Boone keeps joking that whenever Rafael Devers plays against the Yankees, he turns it up like Brooks Robinson defensively, which, like, he's obviously being sarcastic. Brooks Robinson won something like 16 Gold Gloves. Rafael Devers is almost never a plus defender in his 5-year career. But the thing is, one of the reasons for that is because in 2017, that was their first season without David Ortiz. And for some reason, they were like, you know what? Let's just see how this team does if we don't try to replace David Ortiz. And you know how it went? They finished last in the American League in home runs. They called up Devers before he was ready because they needed bat power. That's also why they got Eduardo Nunez, which is hilarious in hindsight. But the reason that Devers came up then is because the team needed help, not because he was ready. And that's been the case for the Red Sox for most of the last 5 years, is that you don't see it. It's not like a Bobby Witt Jr. with the Royals, where like the Royals aren't even good, so it doesn't matter. It's like that he's ready. Or Wander Franco with the Rays, where the Rays are always kind of good, like they're never World Series champions, thanks to Kevin Cash with Blake Snell, but they're not. It's about players being ready versus a team in need. And this whole season, like Josh Winkowski's been pretty great, honestly. The numbers might not reflect that entirely, but I was at 2 of his games where he was phenomenal. And, Brian Bayo was unreal in AAA this year, but he got called up because other people were hurt. And then you get mad at him, like, people were making fun of him because he said he wants to be better than Pedro Martinez. And it's like, okay, your first start as a major league pitcher does not reflect, like, how many players had bad debuts? How many players? I mean, David Ortiz wasn't David Ortiz with the Minnesota Twins, and now he's David Ortiz. The idea is you're ruining prospects because you didn't build a strong enough roster. I will say, the sheer number of injuries is kind of impossible to plan for. We're not talking like one starting pitcher goes down and one reliever goes down. We're talking like there were like 15 players on the injured list at the same time, and about 10 of them were pitchers. There is almost no team in the majors that could withstand that kind of combined impact at the same time.
Yeah.
But the roster was never constructed for really any kind of impact. And we saw that pretty early on in the season, to the point where I thought that they were going to sell at the deadline simply because there was no way to fill all of the holes that they needed to fill. And it bothers me because you're messing with player development. And it's like, well, Chaim Bloom, that's your whole thing. You literally come from the Rays. So you know better than anybody how important it is to not mess with player development. And you need to construct a roster that can somewhat withstand at the major league level injuries. And he did not do that. A lot of it is stuff like Story getting hit by a pitch, Sale getting hit by a pitch, not Sale riding a bicycle, but Sale getting hit by a pitch. There are things, certain injuries are just freak accidents, but a lot of it is just poor roster planning, and there's no excuse for it because you are over the luxury tax and your team has sucked for most of the season.
Very true. I mean, from an outsider's perspective, I'm like, okay, like I see what it is, because the Pirates are also dealing with the same thing. Earlier this year, they dealt with a plethora of injuries, but the young guys came up. So imagine this. You get all these prospects that come up. There's a fire that lights under the entire team. They start doing a bunch of stuff. They beat the Yankees 2 out of 3 games. They go to LA, sweep the Dodgers. It's like, okay, great. But then you bring back Yoshi Tsutsugo, who is batting under the Mendoza line. You still have Josh Van Meter, who's batting under the Mendoza line, and you're still doing all this stuff. So from an outsider's perspective of like where the Pirates are, I always ask every host who I do a crossover with this, what can you tell listeners of my podcast and Pirates fans in general, or even just tell me about the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel to even, and I will take this, I promise, I will take this, to get to the position where the Red Sox are right now.
Oh, man.
I would take that right now. Lauren, you do not understand. I would take being where you guys are right now in the current position you're in.
I would just say, be patient. And that's rich coming from me. I am the least patient person in this world. But I mean, the talent is there, right? Like the prospects are there. So I hate saying be patient. And that's probably rich coming from a Red Sox fan too. But the light is there. If you can't see it, it's there. And each day that passes, you're one day closer to seeing that light. And that's the most optimistic I can be for poor Pirates fans.
Well, and the thing is, too, is what I'm hoping is Ben Cherington taps into that 2013 Boston Red Sox era that he had with you guys at some point, because I'm like, okay, dude, this is year 3 that you've been here, right? At some point, you got to start seeing progress. You got to start seeing some of your guys, not Neil Huntington's guys, because a lot of people get this twisted about the Pirates. Ke'Bryan Hayes and O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds were a product of Neil Huntington's moves. Ben Cherington just inherited that. I need at some point for you to say, this team has enough talent on it to go spend some money. Like, just go, like, who cares? Like, people want to blame it on Bob Nutting. I promise you, Bob Nutting just bought a whiskey company. I don't think he has any issue throwing $10 million at a first baseman who can actually play. But shout out to Boston legend Michael Chavis for everything he does for the Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. I remember Gabrielle sending me the picture of his gym bag when we got him from you guys last year, where he still had his Boston Red Sox gym bag and put "Go Pirates" ARG on it. But at some point, and it's nice and refreshing, actually, and it's going to sound really messed up. It's refreshing to hear that even the Red Sox, a storied organization that has won 4 championships in the last 15 years, if I'm speaking correctly, still deals with incompetent stuff from a front office. Like, as a Pirates fan, it really does just seem like sometimes it's just Ben Cherington, Derek Shelton in the front office here that is just beyond any fixing. But hearing you guys speak the way you were, it really does make it sound like, okay, even when the Pirates contend, there's probably still going to be those issues here.
All right. I mean, look, you have the Orioles, and I don't remember who just came out and said this, but basically their GM was saying, after how good they've been, they plan on spending a lot more money this offseason. And I hope that that's true, because the thing is that baseball, like I said earlier, is better when more teams are actually actively trying to win. And, the new collective bargaining agreement that was agreed to in the spring has kind of incentives against tanking. There are no longer incentives to tank, really. There are incentives when you don't tank. And I hope that that helps. I don't think it's enough, but I will say, yes, Lauren and I know how spoiled we sound when we're sitting here, but we also know that there are different standards in Boston, in New York, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's okay. I'm just saying that is factually the situation. But it's never going to be perfect. You're always going to be unhappy about something. I mean, in 2018, the Red Sox won a franchise record 108 games, and we were still all freaking out about Craig Kimbrell, and he still had something like 40 saves that year. Yeah, his walks per 9 quadrupled or whatever, but he was still much better than most closers, and we were still complaining about him because the year before he'd saved something like 60 games. There is not a single satisfied sports fan in the world. And I know this because I was literally writing an article earlier about how when they traded Christian Vasquez, all of these Sox fans were like, heck yes, it's Kevin Plawecki's time. And now 2 weeks later, literally to the day, people are like, get Kevin Plawecki out of here, call up Connor Wong. Like, it's also just a reflection of where our society is at. We can order anything on our phones. We can get anything delivered. We can call a car in minutes. There's so much that does not require waiting anymore. And so there is a lot more impatience and a lot less delayed gratification in general. And for me, I won't speak for Lauren here, but like, I'm not even saying, Red Sox in the World Series, because quite frankly, I would like it, but it's not really what I care about, because I like underdogs and I like seeing different things happen. Like the 2019 postseason was awesome because the Nationals were an underdog and they'd never won a World Series, and that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And it meant a lot. But over the last 5 or so years, it's basically been the same few teams in the postseason every single year. Like, it's the Astros, the Yankees, sometimes the Red Sox, always the Dodgers. Basically you are just cycling through the same matchups to the point where Jose Altuve hit walk-off home runs off of Aroldis Chapman 2 years in a row, and it was like literally the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. And it's not growing the game because those teams already have money. They already have fan bases. What you need is teams like the Pirates, the Mariners, the Phillies. The Phillies have the two active players with the most games played among all active players right now. Gene Segura and JT Realmuto are the two players with the most career regular season games played without playing in the postseason. And it's partially because Segura started his career with the Mariners and then got traded to the Phillies. It's like, who doesn't want to see something different? You know, I think we're all bored. And yeah, I would love to see, 30 more Red Sox. I would love to see the Red Sox, hit double digits on their World Series championships, but I don't want to be selfish. I've had 4 World Series since I was in grade school. Like, the Cleveland team hasn't had one since 1948. My grandma was in high school in 1948. Like, how dare I? I just want to watch a competently run team that is somewhat competitive. And if they make it to the postseason, fine. But what I care about is teams being competitive, teams putting a watchable product out on the field, and team executives understanding the market that they're working in. Because Chaim Bloom, I'm sorry, I gotta show love for my fellow Jewish people in baseball, but you're not doing the job. You might be doing a job, but you're not doing this job. You're doing a Rays job in Boston. You're not doing a Boston job in Boston.
Speaking of trying to put watchable product on the field, the Field of Dreams game, the Field of Dreams game, which is supposed to be a lot of fun. Like Field of Dreams, like we grew up on that movie. Yes. That's so nostalgic. They even
had a lot of thoughts.
Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr. out there with the iconic, "Hey Dad, want to have a catch?" They built it up so well, I thought, and the product. I didn't watch a minute of the game. I'm not going to lie. Like, but I wanted to be excited, but I can't get excited when it's the Reds and the Cubs and two teams that are not competitive, two teams that maybe could be competitive. And the Cubs are a storied franchise, but the Reds just don't do it for me. No offense to Jeff, if you're listening to this, but it's just, I want to watch the Red Sox Yankees in there. I want to watch the Red Sox Cubs. I want to watch, it's like when the NHL does a Winter Classic, I want to watch original 6 teams. I want to watch the original 6 teams of MLB.
Yeah. And you're missing the best race in all of baseball, Lauren. 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the NL Central. Okay. It's the best race in baseball right now. You got the Cubs at 47 and 66. The Reds are 45 and 68. Pirates are 45 and 70. What more could you want from baseball? That's the race that you should be looking at right there. But I agree 100% about the Field of Dreams game. I was also a component, even as a Pirates fan, watching 2 teams that I get to watch all the time. I watch the game, but I will say I thought it was something they should have did one time. Last year when they did it with the White Sox and the Yankees, it was absolutely awesome. Tim Anderson hitting that walk-off and doing his whole spiel and everything was great. But then after that, I was like, they announced it again this year, and it was the Cubs and the Reds, and I was like, why are we doing this again? It was just one of those things that was cool when it happened once, but it didn't really need to happen again. Like, go do another one. Like, there's so many baseball movies that you could go build a field somewhere and portray it as the way it was portrayed.
Not even that, but like, first of all, if you're trying to do an OG series, Red Sox Pirates was the first World Series ever in 1903. Let's recreate that. That was awesome. I will say it's very fitting, and I'm not the only person who said this. This is not like a inventing the wheel thing. It's kind of obvious, but I rewatched Field of Dreams like 4 or 5 years ago and wrote about it for Girl at the Game, kind of the things that stood out to me. And one of them was that it bothered me that the little girl was the one who was like, let's commercialize this supernatural field. Like, she's the one that's like, we can charge money for tickets to watch ghosts play baseball. And, you resurrecting your relationship with the ghost of your dad. That always bothered me. And I think along those lines, like, it's very MLB to commercialize the Field of Dreams, continue commercializing it, and you're not even commercializing it well because you're putting two losing teams. I understand that the matchup was set, I think, before the season started. Like, I think they announced it last fall or winter. So you didn't know at the time, but you kind of knew. When are the Cincinnati Reds good? Really? Like, you kind of knew that it was not going to be like White Sox, Yankees, Tim Anderson versus Aaron Judge. I mean, it's the Cincinnati Reds. They never win anything. And, they were going to lose Castellanos and trade Winker and then, whatever. It's just, it bothers me that they are ruining things like that just to make more money when they already have so much money. But also, if you're talking about other ways to do this, somebody suggested doing one at this field in Paterson, New Jersey, that's one of the last standing Negro Leagues ballparks. That sounds awesome. You have old ballparks. You still have these ballparks that are standing from the Negro Leagues, old minor league parks. Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you growing the game in the Black community? Why aren't you just doing more to actually give back to make the game more welcoming and inclusive, as opposed to beating Dyersville, Iowa into the ground at Field of Dreams with losing teams?
Yeah, I agree.
Far too easy for MLB. I was like, no, that makes way too much sense.
Well,
again, logic.
And Alex Stump, he's a great writer in Pittsburgh, just said, I am once again begging Major League Baseball to understand people just want to watch two good baseball teams play on a weeknight during the summer on a major network rather than cable or streaming service. Please just put a game of the week on Fox on Thursdays. I don't think people would be mad about that. I mean, it would be easy. Pick a day of the week, give TBS, Fox, ESPN already gets Sunday Night Baseball. Just give Fox and whatever other networks you want to give it to. And you don't have to schedule the game months in advance. Like Gabrielle covers the Phillies on the side. And why the hell were the Pirates and the Phillies on a Fox Saturday night game? That was the stupidest thing they could have ever did. It was boring. There was nothing going on. The Phillies trounced the Pirates. That's just me getting a rant out. But why not do it?
The ballpark, by the way, is Hinchcliffe Stadium in Paterson, New Jersey. Yep. And they're doing a $94 million renovation of it, which is supposed to be done by next year. So it's like, if you want to do it, like Harold Reynolds is one of the people that's kind of campaigning for this, and I'm like, this sounds awesome. It's creative, it's fresh, it's new, and it's actually beneficial to your game in a way that doesn't seem like
it doesn't seem forced. It doesn't seem
forced. Exactly. Yeah. Like you are, like, the Field of Dreams site is like an orange and you're trying to get every last bit of juice out of it before you discard its shell, its peel into the trash. Like, that's what this feels like, is like, we're going to ruin this for you so that you can't even watch the movie anymore without thinking about how we messed this up.
Well, and also speaking on that too, you have teams like the Pirates who every once in a while have a weekend devoted to Negro League baseball teams that played in that city, the Homestead Grays being one of the most synonymous of all time. And I'm also not going to lie to you either. Most of those jerseys that they wear are awesome. Like, they're like all gray. You got like blue or red as a color. They're awesome. They look old timey. They're great. And it would be a great way, as Gabrielle said, to not only reflect on every single major person from the Negro Leagues that influenced all these guys that get to play today, but also it's something that if you announce this randomly, like just a random announcement, like, oh, on August whatever, like we're going to play a game here, people would love it. I think it would be great. I think people would love it. They would eat it alive. I think it would be awesome. And it would help grow the game in so many other ways too, because again, if you want to push the big market thing, people from New York would come down there and watch that game, I'm sure. People from Massachusetts would probably come down and watch that game, I'm sure. You get a lot of people that would probably pop up to a stadium that's getting a major renovation and is also going towards something that spans how long? 120, 130 years worth of heritage among a game that we all call America's pastime. Like, that'd be awesome. I actually love that idea. I think that's great.
Reynolds was literally wearing a Homestead Grays jersey when talking about this recently. And I'm like, yeah, you can have Bob Kendrick, the president of the Negro Leagues Museum, doing analyst work for the game. You can raise money for the Negro Leagues Museum, which is trying to do this new thing for Buck O'Neil. I feel like in general, MLB prefers to ruin things instead of create things. Like,
Preach.
they want to make it harder to enjoy baseball than to make baseball more enjoyable. And I don't
much.
I really, yeah, it's like you go on Twitter. Twitter is free market research for them. It's like all we want is to be able to afford to go to games and to not be blacked out in 17 different states from 14 different ball games that are not even in our state. And I really don't think that that's too much to ask. And MLB's like, no. They're like, congratulations, we've just added paper straws to our ballpark. I'm like, right, but none of us can afford to go to your ballpark, so it doesn't really matter what kind of freaking straw you're giving us with our $13 soda.
I was going to say, no one can afford the drinks that they give the paper straws with anyway. But as much as we want to see better product, I think that's a consensus among many baseball fans. We just want a better product on the field. We want more accessibility to games. But let's wrap this up here. What we expect from this series with the Red Sox and the Pirates. We probably should talk a little bit about the series. We'll end the show on the Pirates chatter. But I'm a simple gal. I'll take 2 out of 3, whatever it is. My expectations are not high anymore. They are what they are. I am at the IDGAF stage of baseball. Like, I don't care what happens. If they lose the next 50 games, they do. If they win the next 50, awesome. My mood is not going to change either way.
I will go ahead and
I'm
tell
dead
you, I think that's what happened. I think that's what's going to happen. I think the Red Sox win 2 out of 3. I think the Pirates just play better at home for some reason. It's this weird thing. Maybe they play in the most beautiful park in baseball. Maybe you should actually put a winning team in it. But Fenway is, of course, a very, very close second. Very, very close second. But yeah, I think the Pirates do steal 1 game. But even then, I think that's a big win for the Red Sox to win 2 out of 3 back-to-back series. And then for your Red Sox fans, hey, you got a bunch of series against the AL East coming up. So keep it hot while you got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lauren can agree that the Red Sox have this funny problem where they will take 2 of 3 from the Yankees, but suck against teams like the Royals. And like, I would love to take 2 out of 3. I also could totally see them going like 1 for 3, just like losing in the most absurdly dumb fashion, because they love to do that, where it's like, they're one of, if not the worst teams at scoring, like driving in runs. Like their numbers hitting, their situational hitting is appalling. They are truly their own worst enemy. So I think there is a very good chance that they lose 2 of the 3 games in the series, just on the basis that, like, sometimes it feels like they don't want to win.
It is. It's the most mind-boggling thing, this Red Sox team this season. But Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you, support your work, find you on Twitter, and all that good stuff?
So you guys can find me on BothSoxInjection.com. It's Fansided's Red Sox site. I am its editor, and you can find me on Twitter at GFSTAR1. And if you're a Red Sox fan, you're probably either already following me or you have me blocked, and either one is totally fine.
Thank you so much for, like I said, joining us, jumping on here to your former
Anytime,
Red Sox
guys.
podcast. We really appreciate it. And Ethan, where can people find you in your sad Pirates take?
Well, at MVP_Ethan is where you can see me fawn over the legend that is George Pickens already in Pittsburgh. But also, I'm a Brian Reynolds stan. I've advocated for them keeping him. I think they're going to keep him. So if you want the slightest amount of optimism about the Pittsburgh Pirates or baseball in general, come see me.
Awesome. So that wraps up this lovely crossover, plus Gabrielle So we'll see how this series goes. I'm hoping it's 2 out of 3, but we'll revisit this, maybe get some old takes exposed on this. But thank you for making Locked On Red Sox and Locked On Pirates your first listen of every day. We'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully it's a Red Sox win that we can recap.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.